On Saturday of last week, I usually record this commentary on church news on Fridays. The news broke on Saturday that the Bishop of Tyler in Texas, Monsignor Strickland, had just been removed from the diocese, dismissed by direct order from the Pope. It was really surprising news, at least for me, although it had been rumored for some time that there was such a possibility. But along with the news itself, it caught my attention and I looked at Bishop's reaction. I was struck by the fact that Bishop Strickland, who is still a bishop, although in this case, Bishop Emeritus of Tyler, Bishop Strickland pointed to the Pope's entourage and not to the Pope himself as the cause. And he also asked for prayers for the pontiff and made those who advised the Pope responsible for what had happened. The reasons were not made known. The Vatican did not say why it has happened, but well, for many at least, the cause is in the criticisms that Monsignor Strickland has made on social media to Pope Francis, especially on one occasion that he accused him of undermining the deposit of faith, as well as the refusal to apply the relegations and the traditional mass in his diocese. This, I have just said, was publicly acknowledged by Pope Strickland. Along with this, I did not know if it was related or not, but there was also something significant about the accusations that Cardinal Muller had made to Pope Francis in an interview to an American magazine. He had said, or at least the magazine had published, that Cardinal Muller said that the Pope have committed numerous material heresies, but none formal. That article disappeared from the internet, and after a few days, I had already made my comment last week. It reappeared with a change, a significant change. It no longer put in the Cardinal Muller's mouth that the Pope have committed numerous material heresies, but it said that the Pope could have committed, which is not the same thing. Therefore, it lowered the tone of that accusation. I insist, I do not know if it is related or not to the dismissal of Monsignor Strickland. Also this week, the fall meeting of the North American Episcopal Conference took place. Well, the dismissal of the Pope of Tyler had just taken place. There was a chance that the North American bishops would say a word about it. And yet, there was total silence. Not a single word about the dismissal of a colleague of theirs. Not a single word. Moreover, the election of some positions for the Episcopal commissions were being voted. Among them, the presidency of the Episcopal Commission for the Defense of Life, and there were two candidates. One was the Archbishop of San Francisco, Monsignor Cordeleon, who however was not elected, and the other was elected, the Bishop of Toledo in Ohio, who is also a deep pro-life man, but less conflictive. Well, perhaps that is not the word. Less well known than the Archbishop of San Francisco. At least I have interpreted this as an attempt on the part of the American Episcopate to lower the tension with the Pope, not to say a word about Strickland, and not to elect someone who has been very critical, not of the Pope or the Papacy, but very critical publicly of the issue of voting for pro-abortion politicians and of giving communion to pro-abortion politicians. However, they have chosen an anti-abortionist bishop, clearly the Bishop of Toledo, and they have also insisted that the defense of life, therefore, the rejection of abortion, continues to be a predominant point. They have said with this word, predominant, when it comes to directing the vote of Catholics. Therefore, they have reaffirmed their position, carefully avoiding direct confrontation with the Pope. In spite of the fact that there have been some statements, at least not very diplomatic, from the nuncio of His Holiness to the United States, recently appointed cardinal, in which there was a criticism, not veiled but very clear, of the direction of the Church in the United States. Well, Both Strickland and the Cardinal Muller, as well as the North American bishops, have wanted to avoid a direct clash with the Pope. Why? Because of the Catholic Church. For Catholics, the figure of the Pope, or in other words, the institution of the papacy, is essential, and therefore, these people, some of whom may have felt victims of how the Pope's entourage have behaved, who according to them are responsible for what is happening. These people try at all costs not to criticize the Pope and not to confront him because they are aware that this criticism of the Pope weakens the papacy. There is therefore an attempt not to attack the figure of the Pope in order not to attack, not to diminish, not to undermine the figure of the papacy. This could seem to be a kind of hand and foot binding to a person in a concrete moment of history. Today, one. Tomorrow it could be another one with a different line, which is hand and foot binding to whatever that person wants to do. It is not like that. It is not like that. In the air will be, is always floating the serious warning of Cardinal Muller when he said, and this had not been changed, that if a pope, any pope commits a formal heresy immediately, ceases to be pope, and therefore must be denied obedience. The limits have been clearly set, but until that limit is reached, which has not yet been reached, and which we pray will never be reached for the sake of all, until that limit is reached, direct criticism of the Pope must be avoided in order to save the papacy. But this week, many more things have happened. For example, the German Bishops' Conference. I don't know whether to call it the German Bishops' Conference, because not all of them were present. Also met with the lay leaders of the German Synod to constitute the so-called German Synodal Council. 4 bishops, only 4 refused to participate, saying that this was an illegal and illegitimate meeting, and that it went against what the Vatican has explicitly forbidden. 4 bishops said they were not going. The rest and other 4, I believe, did not go, but they alleged other excuses, illness or whatever. The rest participated. The objective of this Synodal Council is to leave the laity as the main directors of the church, both in dioceses and parishes, and to transform the bishop and the parish priest, to transform them into just another employee who would be at the orders of the laity. Of course, at the time, the Vatican with the highest rank condemned this type of initiative. They have met. They are elaborating the norms to carry out these diocesan and then parish synodal councils. Of the Vatican, there has not been a single word concerning this. This week, there has also been something else very surprising and very important. The doctrine of the faith, with the signature of the Pope, has reiterated the condemnation of membership in Freemasonry. You cannot be a Catholic and be a Mason. With the signature of Pope Francis, and there is also a direct allusion to the clergy, and it clearly states that one who is affiliated to a Masonic lodge, whether a layman or a clergy, is a mortal sin, in grave sin, and therefore cannot receive communion. Of course, for clerics who are Masons, they will not care about this because they surely do not believe in mortal sin, and they do not believe in eternal life, and they do not believe in damnation, and they have probably lost faith completely. But if anyone still had some faith, cleric or layman, this is something very important, and it is not something that Leo XIII said or that Ratzinger said later. No, it is something that Pope Francis has just said through the doctrine of the faith, presided over by Cardinal Fernandez. I think it is a very significant fact that removes any kind of suspicion that Pope Francis is in coalition with Freemasonry. There have been, in these years, many accusations in this regard, I think this shows the injustice of those accusations. Returning to the initial topic, it does not seem to me that it is a question of discussing whether it is fair or unfair that Bishop Strickland has been removed as the assistant bishop. He is still a bishop, Bishop Emeritus. I am sure that those who have done it consider it to be fair, and many others consider it to be an unfair act. I think you have to ask yourself if whether it's useful, whether it's smart to have done that. And I think that argument may perhaps sway those responsible for the removal more than the argument of unfairness. It is useful to have removed Strickland. Is it smart to have done it? Is it smart to have removed a road strewn with dead bodies if it was intended to make the American bishop afraid? It has been a total failure. If that is what was intended, before they have revalidated by a large majority that abortion continues to be a predominant criterion in deciding the vote of Catholics, contrary to what was intended by that minority, but which is largely made up, not only, but largely by the cardinals appointed by Pope Francis. The American bishops have not gone to the confrontation with the Pope, but have avoided it. They do not want to attack the Pope because they know that it would weaken the papacy, but they maintain their position. So, is it intelligent? Is it effective to have removed Monsignor Strickland? He has declared that the nuncio, whether in a diplomatic way or not, is up in the air. The nuncio told him that he should not go to the plenary of the episcopate. Although he had the right to do so, he is a bishop, and he is a North American bishop, Bishop Emeritus, but bishop, and he can participate with voice but not vote. The nuncio told him not to go. He did not forbid him, he cannot do it, but he told him not to go, and Strickland did not go. But he stood at the door of the place where the plenary assembly was held. He stood at the door with a group of lay people praying with rosary. I ask again, is it smart to go leaving the road full of dead bodies? Now Strickland has more freedom than before. I am not saying that he is doing it now. I do not know if he will do it in the future. But he has more freedom than before. And once action has been taken against him, and the responsibility he had in the diocese has been taken away, now the only thing they can do is to excommunicate him. And for that, there has to be something really serious, beyond the criticisms he could make. At the same time, nothing is being done against those German bishops who are explicitly, publicly disobeying what the Pope and the Vatican has ordered in something much more serious than refusing to apply the norms of the traditional Mass. The papacy must be saved. Really, the papacy must be saved. To save the papacy, we have to, as Monsignor Strickland is doing, as Cardinal Muller is doing, as the North American bishops, we have to avoid direct criticism of the Pope. We have to save the papacy, but we have to save it among all, not only those who endure the beatings. The papacy has to be saved. The Church needs the papacy to continue to exist, and for that, as Monsignor Strickland asks, what we have to do, without ever forgetting it, is to keep on praying. Until next week, God willing.